The night had fallen quiet over Dust Valley Ranch, where the desert wind sang its lonely tune through the cracks in the old wooden walls. The moonlight slipped through the cabin's small window, painting silver lines across the floorboards. Inside, the smell of wood smoke and wild sage mixed, with the faint scent of lavender, the kind the bride had sprinkled in her hair that morning when she'd said her vows. Her name was Alara, and though she wore the white dress of a new bride, her eyes carried the weight of someone who had walked too far, lost too much, and was still learning how to stand again. Across from her stood Colt, a tall, quiet cowboy with dust on his boots and stories he'd never told. He was a man who'd buried more dreams than most folks dared to dream. Yet when he looked at her, something in his chest softened, like a storm giving way to sunlight. The cabin was dimly lit, one candle flickering on the table between them. Alara's hands trembled as she smoothed the fabric of her skirt, her voice barely rising above a whisper. "I'm scared. It's my first night." The words weren't about the dark or the quiet. They were about everything. The fear of a new beginning, the fear of being known, truly known. Colt's face softened. He didn't move closer right away. Instead, he took a slow breath, reached for his worn leather belt, and laid it gently on the table. "Then take this," he said, voice low and steady. "My pa always told me, when you're scared, hold on to something that's been through storms. This belt's seen dust, rain, and long roads. Just like me. Maybe it'll remind you that you can stand strong too." Alara stared at the belt for a long time. It wasn't the gesture she expected, but something about it broke through the wall she'd built inside. Carefully, she reached out and took it, wrapping it around her hands like a lifeline. Tears welled in her eyes, not of sadness, but of release. Colt sat down across from her, the firelight catching the edges of his jaw, his eyes soft but unreadable. "You don't have to be scared of me, Alara," he said gently. "I ain't here to take anything from you. I'm here to build something with you. Maybe slow, maybe clumsy, but honest." The silence that followed was heavy but warm. Alara let out a shaky laugh, the kind that comes when fear starts to melt. "You sound like you've practiced that speech," she teased lightly. Colt chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Nah, I just know what it's like to start over when you don't think you can." The clock ticked softly in the corner. Outside, a coyote howled far away like a lonely hymn. Inside, two souls sat in the glow of a single candle, strangers learning to trust again. As the flame danced, Alara began to talk, slowly, haltingly, about the past she'd never told anyone. The town she left, the promises broken, the fear of not being enough. Colt didn't interrupt once. He just listened, his eyes steady, his hands folded. And when she finished, he only said, "You made it through all that. You think one night's gonna beat you now?" That made her laugh again, softer this time, fuller. She looked at the belt still clutched in her hands and whispered, "Maybe this belongs to both of us now." Colt smiled, the kind of smile that stays even after the light fades. The candle burned lower, and the fear in her chest eased. She wasn't alone in the dark anymore. She wasn't running. For the first time, she felt safe enough to breathe. The dawn came soft and gold, spreading across the valley like hope returning after a long winter. The cabin glowed with the first light, and the air smelled of coffee, cedarwood, and rain from the night before. Alara stirred awake, still wrapped in the quilt Colt's mother had made years ago, a patchwork of faded reds and dusty blues. She blinked against the light and saw Colt outside the window, feeding the horses, his silhouette framed by the sunrise. The sight made her chest ache, not with fear this time, but something gentler, something that whispered, "You're home now." She rose quietly, the floor cool beneath her bare feet, and picked up the belt she'd held all night. It felt heavier now, not just leather, but history, a symbol of strength, of promises, of trust earned, not given. When she stepped outside, Colt looked up and smiled, that slow cowboy smile of his. "Mornin', Mrs. Walker," he said, tipping his hat. The sound of that name made her blush. She still wasn't used to it. "Morning," she said softly, handing him the belt. "I believe this belongs to you." Colt took it but didn't put it on. "Nah," he said, holding her gaze. "It belongs to us now. Every scar on it's a story, and I reckon we're about to add a few of our own." They stood in silence for a while, the kind that didn't need words. The world was waking up. Birds in the cottonwoods, wind in the tall grass, the distant rumble of cattle. Alara leaned against the fence, watching the horizon stretch wide and endless. "I never thought I'd find peace again," she said quietly. Colt nodded. Peace don't find you, he said. You build it, plank by plank, day by day. He paused, glancing her way. But it helps when you've got someone who believes you can. That morning turned into laughter over breakfast. The sound of clinking dishes, and small jokes that only two people trying to heal could share. Alara found herself smiling more freely, her hands no longer shaking when she reached for his. The belt hung by the window now, a reminder of the night fear turned into courage. Later, as they saddled the horses to ride down to town, Colt looked over his shoulder and said, You know, last night wasn't just your first night, it was ours. The first night of the rest of it. Alara mounted her horse, the wind catching her hair, and smiled back. Then let's make the rest of it count. The sun rose higher, bright and fierce, spilling gold over the valley. Two riders moved side by side into the open land. Past pain, past fear, into something new. Love didn't need perfect words or grand gestures, just the courage to stay.